It's Paul Joseph Watson with Infowars.com, and I'm delighted to be joined by anti-Big Brother campaigner, Guardian contributor, Liberty Human Rights Award nominee, and spokesman for No CCTV, Steve Jolly. Steve, welcome to the show today.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Now, just beginning here, Steve, tell us briefly about yourself and how you've become one of the UK's foremost anti-Big Brother crusaders.
It kind of happened by accident, really, when something happened in my home city of Birmingham, the second biggest city in the UK. And it was really a wake-up call for me that something was seriously wrong. And just very briefly, what happened was an enormous surveillance operation was mounted, big intelligence gathering operation to ring-fence two communities in Birmingham. And basically track the movements and the whereabouts and the comings and goings of 90,000 people. And it was just when these cameras appeared and people started asking what they were and what it was all about. Initially we were told it was for community safety, etc. Turned out to be a massive spying operation. I basically blew the whistle and went to the media and kicked up a massive stink in the media that dragged on for about 6 or 8 months until eventually the chief constable was forced to apologise and scrap the scheme, take all the cameras down. And that was a massive victory. And it really got me involved in the wider agenda of surveillance, which I was obviously researching at that time. And what I've uncovered is, you know, the scale of it and the vastness of it. And then that's really why I got involved with No CCTV, campaigning against it, doing interviews, writing articles, and really trying to spread the word that you know this is a huge threat to freedom.
And of course, there's a really fervent interest in this in Britain because, you know, we're the most surveilled country on the planet. Basically, 20% of the world's surveillance cameras for 1% of the population. Other countries are quickly catching up, though. But you know, besides the BS excuses they give us about tracking crime, which as we'll go on to discuss, you know, it doesn't stop crime at all. What's the real psychological agenda behind the surveillance society? Explain to us about the Panopticon Effect that all this surveillance has on us mere cattle humans.
Well, we are, in Britain at least, we are getting towards an almost seamless surveillance network. So whether you're inside a building, outside a building, on the street, you've now got cameras in buses, trains, taxis, pubs, restaurants, schools, even toilets now. So there's almost nowhere that you can go that you're not being filmed. And the idea is that there is really, the technology has been proven to have almost no effect on crime. That's just the excuse to roll it out. But there is a psychological aspect to it, which really relates back to Jeremy Bentham's Panopticon idea, which is the model for the perfect prison, which is based not on armed guards and locks and bars and that sort of thing, but on the idea that people will be their own guard, their own watcher, so that their behaviour will be modified and influenced by the fear and the threat of constant surveillance. And this works whether or not it's actually happening. So the surveillance might be patchy, might be sporadic, but if the idea that it's constant and perpetual exists in the minds of the population, then that's where the psychological effect comes into play, and people start sort of fearing that everything they do is being watched, and therefore they should modify their behaviour, and it becomes a psychological tool at that point. So whether the cameras are even switched on or not, it would still have that effect, and that's really where we're heading towards.
Yeah, it's the whole thing about people modifying their behaviour, as you said, and that creates an environment of fear, distrust, paranoia. And as you said, it makes people less inclined to exercise the freedoms that they do have for fear of persecution by this all-seeing Big Brother. But tying into that is, of course, we've got the barking surveillance cameras in Middlesbrough extending to other areas of the UK. But now the next level in this technological development is Intell Streets, which we see rolling out in the US. And we at InfoWars are actually the first ones to kind of blow the whistle on this. It was already out in the media. They were pushing it out with their PR press releases. I looked into it and found out that it was basically a whole networked surveillance hub of street lights that double as both surveillance cameras and emergency broadcast systems. They can bark out orders. They can even record people's conversations on the streets. And this is the truly the next level of this digitized high-definition surveillance landscape that you talk about. So tell us about Intell Streets and the next level of surveillance that we're now seeing rolled out.
Well, that is the Orwellian telescreen, isn't it? The monitor in the street that can watch you and speak to you and record you. These Intell Streets systems, it just basically turns the whole street lighting network into a spy grid, and they've reportedly got sensors, people counters, you know, as you said, speakers, microphones, so they can listen in, they can talk to you. I mean, this is sort of such control freakery. You know, the technocrats are saying this is a wonderful thing for society to make us all safe. But again, it's the psychological control, the behavioural modification that we're being saturated from all sides with now. And you know, I can see this. I think it's already been installed in, is it Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Chicago? It's being installed right now.
Cities, yeah.
And, you know, if the Department of Homeland Security gets its way, I'm sure they'll extend that to other cities as well. And Britain, incidentally, is switching to not the same thing, not yet anyway, but it's switching to a smart street lighting grid. So it's all centrally controlled, and the idea is that it's energy saving, and it can be controlled remotely from one central location, which would be handy, I guess, for implementing curfews and things like that. But you've always got the option to add other technologies to it. Once you've got a centralized control system, you know, you can add, you know, surveillance capability at a later date. Haven't heard anything about that yet in the UK, but it's something I'll certainly be looking out for.
Now, just briefly, this Snoopers Charter bill, we're talking about complete, total surveillance of email and all communications. Tell us what the Snoopers Charter means for online privacy.
Well, this draft communications bill, you know, it's, to me, it's horrendous. It basically declares that every citizen is now a suspect, and that that everyone will be under constant and perpetual investigation and monitoring. So it attempts to spell the end of privacy, the private conversation. Anything you do electronically, whether it be on your landline telephone, your mobile phone, the internet, web pages you look at, emails, text messages, everything will be monitored and stored. And this again you know, it taps into this sort of panopticonization of society, so that it's the idea in people's minds that you cannot say or do anything without the government or a private corporation listening in and monitoring. And it all sort of gathers towards the conformity principle, so that people don't stray outside of accepted norms, whether it be in free speech or political speech, or there is this fear that everything is monitored, and you know, to keep people in their boxes of conformity and normality. And the Snoopers Charter really is an outright declaration of totalitarianism. The only other governments that already do this openly are China, Kazakhstan, and Iran. It's the total monitoring of the citizenry. And that suggests that we no longer have an elected representative government. We have an outright oppressive tool of persecution in its place, which is horrific. And I really want people to wake up and realise where this is heading, and how extreme a measure this is.
Now, moving on, automatic license plate recognition cameras, called ANPR in Britain. Same thing rolling out in the States, ALPR, and people are always worried about, you know, TSA, internal checkpoints, show us your papers. But this is, as you described it, an invisible checkpoint that's already being enforced on us, and barely anyone knows about it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, ANPR, automatic number plate recognition, is quite a big, scary, powerful tool. And it's been sold to the public as a way that the police can track stolen vehicles and catch wanted criminals. And of course, what's not to like about that? But it does a lot more than we're being told. So what we're told it does is it scans every number plate of every vehicle that passes by a camera and just checks that the car's not stolen, that it's taxed and insured, stuff like that. But it's also a massive intelligence gathering tool. It tracks, records your every journey, records a log of everywhere you've ever been. And in Britain, this is on the motorways, the main roads, petrol stations. There's well over 10,000 of these cameras that have been stealthily erected by ACPO, the Association of Chief Police Officers, which is this private company that designs UK policing policy, largely unaccountable to Parliament or MPs at all. They're very secretive about where they've put them and how many they've got. They don't want us to know about this. They won't give information out under the Freedom of Information Act. But what's the most insidious part about it is that behind the cameras, which are just basically, standard CCTV cameras that take a photograph of the license plate, what sits behind that is a really sophisticated back office system. So we have data mining software to compile huge amounts of data on people, and this is this is basically intelligence gathering. So this isn't about looking for wanted criminals or stolen vehicles. It's much more than that. And one of the main manufacturers, there are many, but Pips Technologies, American firm, they've supplied the Home Office and all UK police forces with these cameras and the systems that sit behind them. There's a company called PlateScan Inc., which is an American company that's openly working with the CIA. I mean, there's a press release on the CIA's website that says they welcome PlateScan Inc. and into a technology partnership to support the aims of the Central Intelligence Agency and the wider intelligence community. So that suggests it's not just about finding stolen cars and perhaps catching the odd drug dealer, but this is much bigger than that. And the intelligence gathering function is what it's really about. But that's the bit that we're not being told about. We're being told about, this will keep your community safe and catch bad guys. But really the intentions are much more insidious.
And also they've got them at all the modern car parks. I went to Heathrow yesterday, and to use the car park you need to submit yourself to one of these license plate scans, otherwise you're not getting out the car park, because that's how they know you've paid. So they're phasing it in everywhere. But I mean, Steve, why, if you've got nothing to hide, why are you so worried?
Well, that's an interesting point, because currently the UK police say that they're only really using about 2% of this data. So all the data that's available to them, the 2% that they're really interested in currently is actual crime. So they would check for tax, insurance, and against the criminal database. So that just see that car isn't connected with crime, and that's mainly what they say they're using, and that's the 2%. But the data mining companies that are working with the police are encouraging them to make use of the 98% of data that they don't currently use. Now, what that means is all the innocent people, the innocent law-abiding people who've done nothing wrong, the police are now saying, well, we've got all this information, why don't we do something with it? We could really get in there and analyse that and interpret patterns of behaviour and make links between people and locations and really build files on people. These are people who are not suspected of doing anything wrong. So the data mining and intelligence gathering aspect is really the thing that's most worrying, because that really doesn't matter whether you've got something to hide or whether you've done something wrong. It's irrelevant. You are still under scrutiny and investigation perpetually, simply for daring to leave your house and drive on the roads. And that's the scary thing. At the moment in the States, these cameras are largely mobile units in squad cars, and that's how they're being used. There are thousands of police departments in the States already using this, and it's the fastest growing technology in law enforcement over in the US. But it's predicted that this will probably go the way of the UK, and that these cameras will be erected permanently by the roadside, on posts and on motorway bridges, so that it will become part of the road infrastructure. So surveillance and tracking and intelligence gathering will be part of the travelling experience. And this should really be a wake-up call for the American public, because this really could spell the end of that great symbol of American freedom, the freedom of the open road. Because these cameras and the investigation that sits behind them they are digital checkpoints, they're virtual checkpoints. So you might not be pulled up by an armed policeman and told to show your papers, because you don't need to have that to happen. It happens automatically, and it's done invisibly, so you don't notice it. So it's the invisible police state that's really powerful, but you're not noticing it, you're not seeing it, and that's what makes it all the more insidious, really.
Now, a few years ago, London Metropolitan Police put out this poster campaign, and basically it said, because the local residents reported somebody filming a surveillance camera, a bomb was averted. And we did a big piece on that, and basically it's about this process of anybody who's suspicious of being completely watched 24/7, they're the suspect, they're the criminal, they're the terrorist. But on the flip side, there's this whole meme about how we have to start loving Big Brother. So they've split it on two sides. They explain to us, again delving into the psychological aspect, why they're doing it, why they're treating people who are aware of the surveillance as suspects while telling everybody else that they should love Big Brother, it's for their safety.
Well, part of selling this to the public is linking support for CCTV and surveillance of other forms with good citizenship. So if you're an honest, law-abiding, tax-paying person, then you're encouraged to support surveillance, whether it be CCTV cameras, ANPR, internet snooping, any kind of surveillance. We're being urged that this is the good thing to do if you're a good citizen. And a lot of people buy that and consider that it's not a threat to them because they're not doing anything wrong. But it's part of the psychological conditioning that if you're not happy with the constant surveillance and you object to it in some way, then you're going to be labelled a criminal. You're going to be suspected. You're going to be considered suspicious. What have you got to hide that you don't like to be under constant surveillance? And it's conditioning the public to love the surveillance, to welcome it, and even ask for more of it.
Now you've got two big activist events coming up in the world of anti-Big Brother campaigning. Tell us about those, and also tell us about the victories you've had. You briefly mentioned one earlier with Project Champion, because people should not get disillusioned by this. We've fought back on several fronts and we've had victories. So tell people about that. Tell people about the events coming up soon.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because when you start to look at all the various elements of the surveillance state and how it fits together and the developments that we're told are coming down the pipeline, it can seem a bit overwhelming, and people might think, wow, what do we do about this? But it can be done, and often it's done at a local level when schemes are discussed and introduced. If there's local opposition to it, you can get them stopped. There's two examples that I'm thinking of just off the top of my head. Is Project Champion in Birmingham, which was a massive spy camera operation. And that was defeated because there was local uproar, there was loads of negative media coverage, and the police were embarrassed because obviously it was exposed that they'd lied about it and that it was something other than what we were told. And cumulatively, 6 months of being battered in the press defeated it. The chief constable apologised and said, look, this has all been a bit of a disaster. We're going to scrap the scheme and just forget about it. That was the only way they could kill the story in the media. So that worked, just local pressure and media pressure. Another example is Oxford City Council. They tried to mandate CCTV cameras in all their taxis, which would also record sound. So they would record everything you say when you're in the taxi, as if this is perfectly normal, and why would anyone be uncomfortable with such a suggestion? And they were going to make this compulsory for all Oxford City Council taxis. But local campaigners, the taxi drivers themselves, and local people and campaign groups like Big Brother Watch in the UK got involved, and the council backed down and said they're simply not going to pursue the scheme. But if people just sort of tut and say, oh, this is dreadful, but don't do anything, then these schemes go ahead. And each little step is another incremental power grab and inching forward. And you've really got to challenge every single one of these, and you can do that at a local level. But on a bigger level, there are movements that are growing and growing. And often these things aren't reported. I'll give you an example of Freedom Not Fear, a big demo that took place in Berlin last September. 7,000, an estimated 7,000 people assembled on the streets of Berlin to protest against Big Brother government surveillance. And this being Germany, it's been a country that has fallen to fascism in recent history, is well aware of the dangers of excessive government power over its citizens. And there were thousands of people marching and protesting against government surveillance. It didn't get a single mention in the UK media at all. I think Russia Today covered it, but it wasn't mentioned in our media, because that might encourage others to do so. But that's taking place this year in September, 14th to the 17th of September. It's in Brussels this time, so they're going to try and hit the EU with this protest, and hopefully there'll be thousands of people there again. We only hope that it will get more media coverage and people will realise that there is massive opposition, and they can join it either locally and individually, at community level, or join a bigger group, internationally. The other one is International 1984 Action Day, which started this year on the 8th of June to commemorate the publication of George Orwell's 1984. I think it was 63 years ago now that it was first published. And that's happening next year. And what that aims to do is to link up loads of events all over the world internationally. So this year we had some in the UK and Europe and Australia. Next year we're hoping to link up with partners in America and other countries too. And that will be around the 8th of June in next year, so 2013. But people can look up, local groups or national groups, get in touch with people. I watched an excellent presentation by Glenn Greenwald the other day, talking about the surveillance state and the NSA and explaining why it was so, posed such a threat. There's all sorts of groups that people can get in touch with. But they do have to do something. We do have to challenge every step forward and every new development, and let people know that the manufacturing of consent isn't working as well as they would like, because it is manufactured. It's sold to us as just a straightforward, simple, good idea that all right-thinking people would agree with, and that only those criminals or terrorists would object to. And we really have to object and do something to slow down the progress and push back the state. And if people want more information, they can look at our website, which is no-cctv.org.uk. I'm also giving a longer interview on this subject a week on Thursday the 19th of July on Sky TV. That's Sky Channel 201 at 7 p.m. A week on Thursday. So I just hope people can get involved and fight back against Big Brother.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Steve, and we've got to get you on InfoWars Nightly News and, of course, the Alex Jones Show, because this is all bombshell information. It ties in with the US. This is by no means just UK-based. Everything we see in the UK is unfolding in the US. So we're definitely going to hear from you again soon. Steve Jolly, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.